Hi guys, how you doing? How was your week? Did you have a good week? Yeah, I know you're still doing the stuff at home, right? You're still doing the online teaching, the online learning and stuff. And some of you are trying to figure out colleges. Was today the last day for the deadline for colleges? Yeah. Well, I know you're going to do great, and I know you're doing really good at home. So, I thought, let me do another Sunday school lesson, and there seems to be a pattern here, like there usually is. And so the first one that I did was right around Easter time, right? So we went over the week before Easter, and then what happened with Jesus being betrayed by Judas, and then being arrested and going through that process, and then being put on the cross and dying, and then taken down, and they didn't know where he was, and then he was alive again. He was alive again, and I don't know if they knew, but he wasn't going to stay. He knew he wasn't going to stay. So he had to go through this process of kind of pulling all the loose ends together before his body was not there anymore, right? That his body was still with us, but you couldn't talk to him, like have a conversation back and forth. So you needed to pull all these loose ends together. So a couple of weeks ago, we talked about that he saw the disciples, and the disciples told Thomas that he was alive, and Thomas said, "I don't believe it until I can see it and touch it." And Jesus said, "This was another lesson, wasn't it? This was another lesson. You need to believe even if you can't see it. You need to believe even if you can't touch it." And then last week, I was walking down the road up in the Poconos while we talked about Cleopas and his friend, and they were talking, and they didn't know it was Jesus, and he came up to them, and they started talking to each other. And it's almost a lesson in terms of, you don't know who you're talking to. Everybody that you're talking to could be Jesus or God. So, there needs to be a certain amount of respect there, which we really didn't go into, but it is part of what he was doing. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today, was that he takes these moments to teach you, just like your parents do, or I do, or your teachers at school do. We take these moments to teach you these life lessons. So this is another part of the process of him tying his loose ends together, but it connects with something that happened in the very beginning in the gospel. So I'm going to read two stories from the gospel. One is from Luke 5, and it's really verses 1 through 7, and that happened in the very beginning. So this was the first one. One day Jesus was standing beside Lake Galilee, and there were a lot of people around who wanted to hear the word of God. And Jesus saw two boats at the shore of the lake, and the fishermen were not on the boats. They were washing their nets. And Jesus got into one of the boats that belonged to Simon. And Jesus sat in Simon's boat, and said, "Could you take me out?" And Simon did. And he started to teach the people on the shore, which I would imagine was probably because there were so many people that they couldn't really hear him or see him. So this was a way that he could get away so they could see him. And when he was done talking, he said to Simon, "Take the boat out into the deeper water. If you put the nets in the water, you're going to catch fish." And Simon said, "Listen, Master, we've been working all night. We didn't catch any fish. But if you tell me to do it, I'll do it." And so he did. They put the nets and they caught so many fish that the net started to break. And then they called to their other friends. And the other friends got so many fish that the net started to break. The boats were so full they were almost sinking. So that's from kind of the beginning of when Jesus was an adult and was starting to teach about what God wanted him to teach. So one of the things that happened was that Jesus was not raised in a fishing family. He wasn't a fisherman. He was a carpenter. His father was a carpenter. But when he told the fishermen what to do, they did it. Even then, they knew that Jesus was going to help them. They did what Jesus said, even though they didn't think he was going to be able to figure it out. When they did do that, when they did what he said, the net was filled with fish. And not only was their net filled with fish, but their friends' net also. Their friends came over and did the same thing, and they had all those fish. So there was a time that Jesus told his friends that he is a fisher of men. So do you know what that means? So the fishermen they caught fish, right? That's what Jesus is trying to do. He's trying to teach as many people as he can. You know, we can have these meetings, what are they called? Zoom meetings, right? Where you have like an abundance of people who can be in this one meeting. But he didn't have that. All he had was him and his voice and his legs to walk. That's all he had. He was trying to teach as many people as he could while he was still with us. Okay, so that happened in the very beginning, where he was trying to catch the people, get them involved, and start to get them to understand that he was somebody that you could listen to and you could believe, right? Now, that's the story right there. Now, there's another story at the end, after he was risen, after he talked to Thomas, and after he walked with Cleopas to Emmaus, right? The town that was outside of Jerusalem. So this is the other story. This comes from John's gospel. So the first one was from Luke's gospel. This is from John's gospel at the end, chapter 21. And then this is also verses 1 through 6. Later, Jesus showed, this is later after he talked to Cleopas and everybody, he showed himself to his followers by the same lake, Lake Galilee. Some of the followers were together. There was Simon Peter and Thomas, Nathanael from Cana, the two sons of Zebedee, and two other followers. And Simon Peter, same Simon as before, said, I am going out to fish. And the other followers said, I'll go with you. Because they were all like fishermen, right? So they all went out and got in the boat. Now, Jesus wasn't there at that point, right? They didn't see Jesus at that point. And so all these fishermen were out all night, same thing. They fished that night, but they didn't catch anything. And early the next morning, Jesus stood on the shore. They didn't know that it was Jesus. So I don't know if it was too far away or he didn't want them to know it was him. And then he said to them, friends, have you caught any fish? And they answered, no. And he said, throw your net into the water on the other side of the boat and you will find some. What are the chances of that? Fish are fish. They don't know one side of the boat from the other. So they did. That's the thing. They did it. They didn't know it was Jesus, but they did it anyway. And they caught so many fish, they couldn't pull the net back into the boat. So here we got these two stories, right? It's basically the same story, only it's the beginning and it's the end. And it has to do with fishermen and fish, because that was what was important back then. So after Jesus died on the cross and was alive again, after he showed himself to Thomas and the disciples and Cleopas and his friend, Jesus found his friends fishing and they couldn't catch any. Jesus showed that when he told them to put the net on the other side, they did it. Why did the disciples go back to fishing? Why didn't they do what he told them to do? Was it because they didn't know how to do it? Was it because they didn't believe him? I'm not really sure. When they didn't know it was Jesus, they still did what he said. They still put the net back into the water again. Now, why would that be? Would that be because a little part of them thought maybe that was something they had to do? Or was that little part of them God or even Jesus just telling them in the back of their head, where they couldn't really hear the specific words, do what he says? And I want to know, what's the connection between when Jesus first met the disciples when they were fishing and the last time they saw each other before Jesus went up into heaven? So Jesus was in their own environment with them, and that's when he was teaching them. And he had to teach to them so that at some point they would be teaching to other people. So when he talked about God, about heaven, Jesus uses ideas that we understand. That's the point of all those parables. All those stories that he tells are things that we understand because we go through them. These were fishermen. He was teaching through the fishing, through the stuff that they knew. This is how your teachers teach you. They teach you with stuff that you understand. I teach preschool, right? Miss Kathy teaches preschool. So I teach how to count on your fingers, because that's what you understand. You have your fingers right in front of you, right? I was doing that today. So that's how you learn. You learn through stuff that's familiar to you. So Pastor Joshua, Pastor Jessica, they teach you that the same way. When they do the children's sermon, they talk about stuff that has happened to them. And they teach us the same way. They teach us according to what we understand. So here's the thing. Jesus went to them in their own environment. And so Jesus is always with us. Right? It's important. That's how we know it's important, because he was with them in their own environment in the very beginning of his teaching, and at the part where he was leaving them, he was with them. And it's kind of a cool ending, isn't it? That he comes right back around. I talk about that a lot, don't I? That things always come back around again. And that's what happened. He came back around again. So we know about that stuff, and we've learned a lot of stuff, but what we want to have God in our lives. We want God in our lives, not just on Sunday mornings. We want God in our lives when we're fishing, or when we're at school, or when we're cooking dinner, or when we're with our friends or at our job. Always there. God's always there. Jesus showed that God is not just someone far away with power saying, do that. God is always with us in every part of our lives. While we're tired, when we're happy, when we're cranky. God's with us when we're mad and silly. He doesn't go away. And he's with us when we're scared. Sometimes we're scared. And God's with us. We're not going to always be scared, just like we're not always silly and we're not always mad. But God helps us through the scary parts, just like he's there when we're having fun. So no matter what happens, God is there for us and helps us. Things will always get better. Things always get better. Bad things happen. Scary things happen. And you just know that God's going to get you through this. It's going to be okay. That's what he's here for. And one of the ways that he does is just time. It just happens. After a while, you realize, I'm not upset anymore. I'm not scared anymore. Or you realize, we got through that. Like the pandemic. We're going to get through it. At some point, it's going to be over. And we're going to go, oh, we did it. And another way to do it is the people that God puts in our lives. Who was in Jesus' life to help? The disciples. And not only that, but in the beginning, the first story, they caught all the fish, and then their friends caught all the fish. There's a connection. There's always a connection. So there's always people in your lives. Your mom and your dad, your grandparents, your brothers and your sisters, your cousins, your grandparents. Your aunts and uncles, your friends, your teachers, the pastors. They're all with you. They're all part of you. And God is giving them the tools to help all of us through this. We all take care of each other. God put you in my life so that I have somebody that I can connect with. And God put me in your life so that you can learn some of the stuff and know that we love you, that I love you, and that we are there for each other and we support each other. We take care of each other. This pandemic is going to end. And some bad things are going to happen, but we're going to get through it. It's not going to be forever. We're not going to be stuck in our houses forever. We're not going to be only being able to talk to people on computers or phones. We're going to be able to hug each other and shake hands and high five and play basketball. It's going to get through it. So you just keep going on and get help from mom and dad and Pastor Joshua, Pastor Jessica, and Miss Kathy and your teachers and your friends and the people who live down the street and the people who are helping you on the computer. All right? If you need me, you call me. I love you. I miss you. If you want to talk, email me or call me. All right? I'll see you next week. Bye.